Yes, I'd say this was a excellent council meeting. Very well. Council adjourned. Oh, hello everyone. Sorry, we just finished up, the Council of Black Harvest, just finished up a meeting discussing what the Warlock's going to be doing going forward, considering some of the circumstances and situations are going on. But anyway, I'm glad that we're at least able to maintain this incredible meeting place known as the Dread Scar Rift. This is one of the coolest order halls in all Legion, and it is so Warlock. It is such an amazing place, and it's exactly the type of order hall the Warlocks would claim for themselves. It's so great. The Warlock campaign itself isn't anything that's like outstanding, but it's still enjoyable, and it's very Warlock. I'll put it that way. I mean, it culminates with us like capturing these two from Sunwell Plateau to be our loyal servants, or rather our obedient slaves. Sorry. Can't help it sometimes when you're a Warlock. This is the current set I got going on. It's kind of a cross between the Blackrock set, which is the Shadow Council set. The gloves are from Mythic Tomb of Sargeras, and then of course the robe is the Nemesis set, the Tier 2 set, which I actually need to... I'm just one piece away from finishing that off, which is actually the set of someone we rescued in Legion. This guy. That's the set he's wearing. Catherine Ebenlock. You remember him, right? The guy who gave me my green Fellfire, who became a demon in the Black Temple we had to save. And actually, we had to banish. Anyways. We, of course, are mainly here... Excuse me, Mile. Do you mind? Give me some room, please. We are here to discuss the lore behind the 3 artifact weapons that the Warlocks get in Legion. The first one you see before you. This Scythe. From the Tome of Blighted Implements, as recorded by Mile Rathaborn, head researcher of the Council of Six. Ulthalesh, the Deadwind Harvester. Those who care for their souls would be wise not to trifle with this cursed scythe. Few among the living know its origins, but its powers are well known to the dead. Ulthalesh gorges on the souls of its victims, gaining strength with each massacre. During the War of the Ancients, Sargeras gifted one of his favored necrolytes with this infernal blade. At the time, it was known only as Ulthalesh. It wouldn't earn its grim epithet until later. After Deadwind Pass was turned into a charnel house, its inhabitants obliterated, the land itself bereft of all life. Since then, Ulthalesh has grown even more powerful. Before his fall from the Titan Pantheon, Sargeras defended creation from demons, imprisoning untold numbers of them in Mardum, the plane of banishment. Over the millennia, these demons were not idle. The Dreadlord, Ulthalesh, ruled the pocket dimension with an iron fist, plotting for the day when he would exact vengeance. When Sargeras shattered Mardum to recruit forces for the Burning Legion, he offered his former prisoners an ultimatum: join him, or be cast into oblivion. Most of the demons accepted, but scores refused, rallying around Ulthalesh. In answer to the challenge, Sargeras forged a great steel scythe from the fires of Mardum's destruction, and he used it to harvest the souls of the recalcitrant demons, confining them in a new prison. Ulthalesh, strongest of will, was the last to be devoured. Sargeras named the scythe Ulthalesh after the Dreadlord who had risen up against him. Uthalesh's spirit gave the weapon unfathomable strength, but with that strength came a curse. For those who bore Uthalesh were inevitably consumed by it. The scythe would obey its master's commands until they were mortally wounded. Then, Uthalesh would feast on their souls. Over the centuries, Sargeras bestowed the blade upon cunning Nethrazim, ferocious doomlords, and even potent demigods, only to see their spirits devoured by Uthalesh after they fell. The scythe grew stronger with each master it absorbed, and it became difficult for Sargeras to find servants who could control the weapon. Over the wailing of souls trapped within the scythe, this thing is starting to sound a lot like Frostmourne with how many souls it has trapped inside. The Dark Titan could hear Uthalesh's grim laughter. During the War of the Ancients, the peoples of Azeroth rebelled against the Burning Legion's invasion, and Sargeras sought to break their will with Uthalesh. But first, he had to find a servant who was powerful enough to wield it. His thoughts turned to the Eridar Satiel. She was the first necrolite with the strength to command the spirits of the living and the dead with fell magic, a feat that rivaled even Kil'jaedan's necromantic abilities. She was also notoriously ambitious and fearless to the point of arrogance. Uthalesh's baleful reputation did not sway her. When Sargeras gifted her with the weapon, she accepted it eagerly. "I shall be its final master," Satiel said. Millennia ago, Sargeras gave Uthalesh to Satiel and commanded her to reap the souls of Azeroth's rebellious denizens. Starting with the area that would later be known as Deadwind Pass, no one knows what the land was called before the coming of Satiel. Most would rather not think of it at all. It is the burial site of countless trolls who were methodically slain, their spirits consumed by Uthalesh, fueling its power to murder more. The scythe would feed and feed until all of the inhabitants were dead. But Satiel knew this was just the beginning, a promising start that only hinted at what Uthalesh was capable of. Sargeras had dispatched her to break the will of Azeroth's denizens. It was not enough simply to kill them. Bodies could be buried and forgotten. She decided to strike at the very heart of the land that no new life could take up residence. With Uthalesh, she would see that Deadwind Pass stood as a monument to the Legion's wrath. Uthalesh has had many masters, but Satiel was the first to discover the scythe's true potential. After she used Uthalesh to consume the souls of all living creatures in Deadwind Pass, she turned the blade on the land itself, draining it of life. The trees were reduced to withered husks. The marshes became a desiccated waste. The sky turned a sepulchral gray. The sun covered in a burial shroud. Satiel relished the despair of the Scythe's new prisoners as they unwittingly assisted in the annihilation of their home. Well, this explains why Deadwind Pass is so dark and gloomy. After all this time, we finally have our answer. The destruction was absolute. Even Azeroth's slumbering world soul quailed. Satiel was impressed with her handiwork. So was Uthalesh. From the Journal of Satiel, recovered from the ruins of Deadwind Pass. I surveyed the ruination I had wrought with great Uthalesh, and it was glorious. The land was a mausoleum. Everywhere was blight, decay, destruction, except for one area. The explosive force from our ritual had carved a massive crater into the ground, and it rolled with unnatural energies, forming a magical nexus. I knew in my bones that I had birthed a fount of power more potent than the scythe itself. I must inform Sargeras, but something gives me pause, something I cannot dismiss. What claim does Sargeras have to this power? Who else but I could have wielded the scythe to the fullness of its potential? No one. Ulthalesh knows this. He urges me not to surrender our progeny. With such great strength at our command, he says we may one day challenge Sargeras. It would have been nice to have, for the Warlock to have 2 artifacts that talk to him. Like all who presumed to wield this pernicious blade, Satiel was ambitious, strong-willed, and supremely confident. She had come to Azeroth to prove herself to Sargeras, but when she saw the heights of power that she could reach with Ulthalesh, she wondered whether she had set her sights too low. She had massacred thousands, turned the land into a tomb, and ripped open a magical nexus of unspeakable force. Her destiny was bright, and she needed no one's patronage to achieve it. Ulthalesh whispered to Satiel from the scythe, infecting her mind. She decided to keep the magical nexus for herself, and she cast potent wards to hide it from the outside world. Then, she cut off all contact with the Legion, biding her time until she and Ulthalesh had the strength to challenge the Dark Titan. For centuries, the Necrolite Satiel guarded Ulthalesh and hoarded the magical nexus that they had created. When Sargeras discovered her deception, he was furious. The fount of power was his by right, and Satiel was keeping it from him. Not only that, but his spies informed him that she was harboring delusions of grandeur, conspiring with the spirit of Ulthalesh to slay Sargeras. Such arrogance could not go unpunished. The upstart Eridar had to be eliminated. Sargeras found his champion in Skavel, the guardian of Tirisfal. He sent the guardian visions of a dangerous entity lurking in Deadwind Pass, a demon awaiting the return of the Burning Legion. Skavel boldly took up the charge, hunting down Satiel after an epic battle, slaying her with her own weapon. Her soul was cast screaming into the scythe. As the guardian examined the blade, he was filled with dread. Rarely had he seen so mighty an instrument of death, and though he had slain its bearer, he wondered whether the real threat remained unchecked. He decided to hide Ulthalesh where no one would find it. Empowered by Satiel's spirit, the scythe had grown immeasurably stronger. There seemed to be no limit to how powerful it could become. Sargeras knew of Ulthalesh's scheming, of his promises to Satiel that they could one day rival the Dark Titan. Although he dismissed this as mere bravado, he refused to give Ulthalesh the opportunity to make good on his threat. Centuries after Skavel hid Ulthalesh, Sargeras twisted the guardian Medivh's mind so he would assist him in regaining control of the scythe. The guardian became obsessed with this task, and he dispatched the cursed Dark Riders to search for the blade and bring it back to the Tower of Kil'jaedan, which had been built on top of the magical nexus in Deadwind Pass. The nexus that Satiel and Ulthalesh had created. Sargeras was pleased. It was only a matter of time before the Dark Riders would find the weapon, making a mockery of Ulthalesh's ambitions. So powerful was Medivh's charge that the Dark Riders continued their quest for Ulthalesh even after the Guardian's death. Eventually, their leader, Kil'jaedan, was drawn to the scythe when he sensed the keening of the trapped souls within, and he brought it to the catacombs beneath Kil'jaedan. We'll find out more about this guy Kil'jaedan when we read up on the lore of Aluneth, the mage arcane artifact weapon. Kil'jaedan lacked the willpower and ingenuity of Satiel, and his stewardship of Ulthalesh did not last long. There are conflicting reports about how he met his end. Some say that he succumbed to the Scythe's curse. By the way, I just realized I was wrong. It wasn't Aluneth I was thinking of. It was Apocalypse, the Unholy Death Knight artifact, which we already read up on. So if you want to know more about that, check that out on the lore of the Unholy Death Knight artifact Apocalypse to find out more about Eredin. Eredin lacked the willpower and ingenuity of Satiel, and his stewardship of Ulthalesh did not last long. There are conflicting reports about how he met his end. Some say he succumbed to the Scythe's curse after he was defeated in battle, but others tell a different story. By all accounts, however, Ulthalesh went missing soon after Eredin's death. Its current whereabouts are unknown. Legends hold that only an individual of exceptional skill and fortitude can control it now. The following is an excerpt from a hypothetical examination of the Legion's weaknesses. Author unknown. It has been deemed apocryphal by the archival authority of Argus and is currently banned in all Legion-controlled worlds. I didn't know the Legion apparently had readings or books or libraries. Since when do demons take the time to just sit around and read? I mean, I could perhaps see Kil'jaedan being the schemer he is, perhaps doing some research on certain things. But could you imagine some of the Nathrazim or Archimonde just kind of sitting in a library reading a book? It just seems kind of silly. There are few things in creation that Sargeras fears. The Deadwind Harvester, Ulthalesh, is one of them. The Necrolite Satiel regrets that she did not attempt to slay the fallen Titan with it when she had the chance, so she will test whoever dares to wield the weapon in her stead. Ulthalesh does not mind. The Scythe's master will either overcome Satiel or be consumed, which will only make the blade more powerful, and then another bearer will take their place, and another. Ulthalesh has been playing this game with Sargeras for millennia. He knows the meaning of patience. Although, that ends up not being entirely true, since I was the last wielder of this, before we ended up having to... I guess... Is the explanation that when we use the power of all of our artifact weapons on the wound in Silithus, that the weapons themselves, like, just kind of, like, either became dead weight or they were just kind of gone? Like, in lore, like, they're just kind of, like, disintegrate or evaporate or whatever because they used up all their power? I'm just saying. Ooh, I gotta finish getting that set there from Ulduar, so I can look like the guy from the Wrathgate cinematic. Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Alright. Say hello to one of the talking artifacts in this game. The artifact for demonology. This is Thal'Kiel, the skull of the Minari. This is a dagger that you can wield. This was the big advertisement of the skull of the Minari, this guy right here. And the dagger is the spine of Thal'Kiel. Now, I've actually already done a video about this where I pretty much listed, I not only read the lore, but I also read up all the quotes and lines of dialogue that he has in the game, because he has a lot to say in the game if you play throughout all of Legion as a demo Warlock. I do have the secret skin for him. I just don't want to use it because it is gross. It's a floating Draenei head. No, thank you. That is disgusting. I'd much rather have the skull with a fake jaw and be able to pretend to be like I'm in a Shakespeare play and be like, alas, poor Thal'Kiel. I knew him well, Horatio. Anyways. This is a fun story. I like this one. Thal'Kiel is quite an interesting character. And what happened to him. Behold, the skull of Thal'Kiel. Denied. Once a great leader of the Eredar, he gazed into the depths of the great dark beyond, and embraced that which gazed back. He saw worlds consumed by fellfire, Dark creatures of the twisting nether, overrunning mortal civilizations. The conquest of creation. Now all that remains of him is this skull, which lends the bearer his power to command demons. Like most skulls, Thal'Kiel comes with a cautionary tale. Never mind that it has been heeded by none. By the way, please give me back the ability to have a permanent Doomguard or a permanent Infernal for Demo. Warlock, please, Blizzard, please give that back. I know I can summon a Infernal as Destro, but come on! You can't even summon a Doomguard anymore. It's ridiculous. I really wish they would go do really make Demo Warlock so much more enjoyable and better. Before the coming of Sargeras to Argus, the Eridar Thal'Kiel ushered in a golden age for his people. Thal'Kiel was a sorcerer of unparalleled talent, and he and his Wakeners pushed the limits of summoning and binding magics, conjuring the arcane entities that helped build the capital's wondrous architecture. Thal'Kiel... Why am I not holding... Hold on a second. There we go. There we go. I want to show off the dagger, at least. Apparently it's just spine. That's what it's called. Where was I? Thal'Kiel also devised the machines that focus the world's latent arcane energy, suffusing Argus with peace, harmony, and vitality. All were in awe of his abilities, including his young apprentice, Archimonde. There were rumors that Archimonde coveted Thal'Kiel's power and influence. No kidding. But the Eridar leader dismissed these as pure fabrication, for his apprentice had shown him nothing but devotion. Archimonde had even gone to great lengths to commission a custom-made crown for Thal'Kiel, taking the measurements for his head himself. Thal'Kiel led an order of Eridar Magi called the Wakeners, specialists in the arts of conjuration and binding. They were renowned for their clever arcane constructs, exploring new frontiers in summoning. Yet Thal'Kiel was never one to rest on his laurels. He thirsted for more, seeking to elevate his order to levels undreamed of. He searched uncharted terrain, venturing farther than any Eridar had dared before. His spells plumbed the vastness of the great dark beyond, petitioning for a deeper well of power. One day, he received an answer. Thal'Kiel was brilliant, but he was not wise. A dark presence whispered to him, and the Eridar's mind was consumed with visions of power, beyond his wildest imaginings, of ranks upon ranks of deadly servants, eager to obey his every whim. These demonic forces made Thal'Kiel's arcane constructs look like a child's playthings. Afterward, he would despise the arcane, his passion reserved only for fel magic. You can understand why. I mean, fel magic is, in lore, probably the most powerful form of magic. It's just obviously very detrimental. Thal'Kiel's mysterious benefactor bestowed upon him the ability to summon lesser demons, and the Eridar immediately spread the knowledge to his Wakeners. Imps and fellhounds, infernals and abyssals, all executed the commands of Thal'Kiel and his sorcerers. Convinced that this was the start of a new era, Thal'Kiel feverishly prepared to present his wondrous pets to the rulers of Argus, Velen and Kil'jaedan. Brilliant, but not wise. In the presence of Velen, Kil'jaedan, and the Eridar rulers, his inner circle, the sorcerer Thal'Kiel demonstrated what his fell darlings could do. I love this. He basically just, in this moment where he decides to then put on a demonstration, he basically is like how Tony Stark was at the beginning of the first Iron Man movie when he shows off the Jericho missile for all the military generals, putting on a demonstration for, look at what this can do. That's basically, because here, he does a whole demonstration. First, he summoned scores of his familiar arcane constructs and arrayed them in orderly rows. Then, the sky went dark, and the clouds rolled as a storm of meteors crashed down. From the craters emerged an army of infernals, which Thal'Kiel unleashed on the constructs. It was a symbolic display of the new era that he saw for his people. He watched rapturously as the demons obliterated the unfortunate arcane entities, smashing and burning them until smoke and embers remained. See, he thought this was cool, because he thought he had found a new source of energy and power for his people. When he first discovered the twisting nether, he's like, "What's this in here? There's energy, there's power, just like tons of power." And the more he looked into it, the more he got fascinated by it. He was like, "Wow, this is awesome! Just think of how much more this is going to help grow and progress our civilization." He was very excited about it. He never, and keep in mind, no one really understood the negative stuff about this back then. So, remains. Such was the demons' fury that even the nearby columns and statues were reduced to rubble and ash. An acceptable sacrifice on the altar of progress, as far as Thal'Kiel was concerned. But when he looked upon his colleagues' faces, he didn't see the approval that he expected. Kil'jaedan's expression was remote, inscrutable. But there could be no doubt about how Velen felt. He condemned Thal'Kiel's new summonings, and he ordered him never to conjure them again. The following is from an account of Thal'Kiel's last days, written by an anonymous Wakener. It was recovered from Archimonde's private archive. After Master Thal'Kiel's disastrous demonstration, Velen forbade him from conjuring demons, denouncing his new era as a failed experiment. Thal'Kiel withdrew to his chambers for weeks. He neither ate nor slept. His only companions were the demonic minions that he would summon and then banish in rage. Or so we guessed. All we could hear were the shrieks of imps as they were thrust back and forth between this realm and the twisting nether. We also sensed the presence of other, larger entities with him, shadowy apparitions of baleful influence, though his servants swore that no one had entered his sanctum. When finally Thal'Kiel emerged, he was changed. He had aged by centuries, alone in the dark with his thoughts and his thralls. His back was twisted and stooped, and there was an odd glimmer in his eye. He summoned his wakeners, and we answered the call, for we loved him like a father. He looked at each of us in turn and said only, "The new era begins." Thal'Kiel commanded his wakeners to continue their experiments in summoning fell creatures. In secret, he and his sorcerers conjured demons of increasingly dire aspect, and they cast powerful spells to hide their minions in covert training grounds. Shielded from the eyes of Velen and Kil'jaedan, Thal'Kiel slowly amassed a great demonic army with one purpose: to install him as dictator of Argus. The Wakeners were united behind Thal'Kiel, save one, his apprentice, Archimonde. Although he had no aversion to demons, in fact, he rather enjoyed them. Archimonde was driven by ambition, and he was eager to prove himself to Velen and Kil'jaedan. The night before the Wakeners were to stage their coup, Archimonde revealed Thal'Kiel's plan to the rulers of the Eridar. "You shall have his head for this," Archimonde said. Velen and Kil'jaedan were stunned to learn of Thal'Kiel's treachery. He had summoned legions of fell beasts to build his personal empire, plotting to assassinate the Eridar rulers. He had tapped into a strange new source of power whose limits were unknown, and he needed to be stopped, swiftly and without mercy. To prove his loyalty to Velen and Kil'jaedan, Archimonde broke the wards that hid where Thal'Kiel's demonic army was marshaled, and he led a contingent of magi in storming the secret training grounds. The battle did not last long. Caught off guard, the Wakeners were easily defeated by the invading magi, and without commanders to direct them, the demons were slaughtered. Archimonde himself confronted his master as he was summoning reinforcements. With a single stroke of his blade, he decapitated Thal'Kiel. From Chapter 1 of Treatise on Eridar Phrenology. The science of phrenology, the study of skull shape as a means to determine intellectual aptitude, became popular in Argus around the time of the Second Duumvirate. Its proponents believed that an Eridar's mental faculties, such as willpower, memory, and perception, could be attributed to the shape and size of various protuberances on that individual's skull. Some theorize that if an Eridar skull was sufficiently well proportioned for spellcasting, it could be utilized to channel magical energies, even after death. This practice was deemed too barbaric to be put into common use, though it was not unheard of. Among the most prominent phrenologists during this period were Thal'Kiel and Archimonde. Thal'Kiel in particular was noted for having the archetypal sorcerer's skull, for which he was widely admired. After they crushed Thal'Kiel's rebellion, the Eridar rulers' magi burned the Awakeners' bodies so their fell taint would not spread, and they destroyed the rebels' writings to suppress the knowledge of their foul arts. Archimonde oversaw the effort, and when it was done, he was hailed as a hero. Soon afterward, Archimonde commissioned one of Argus' finest jewelers to gild Thal'Kiel's skull. He claimed that he was preparing it for viewing, as a grim warning not to follow Thal'Kiel's path. In truth, he had it adorned with metals that would enhance its ability to channel magical energy, the perfect decoration for the perfect sorcerer's skull, which Archimonde proudly displayed in his domicile. Archimonde eventually rose to lead the Eridar alongside Velen and Kil'jaedan, and by all accounts he was a wise and sagacious ruler. In actuality, however, a demonic presence had been slowly infiltrating Archimonde's mind, using Thal'Kiel's skull as a conduit for its pernicious influence. While Archimonde slept, he saw visions of civilizations consumed in magnificent fellfire, and a dark god standing at the head of a glorious army. The entity whispered promises of strength that were impossible for mere mortals to comprehend, and Archimonde drank them in, eager to learn more of this mysterious being and his invincible legions. So basically, Sargeras was using Thal'Kiel's skull to send these visions and whispers to Archimonde to set up his meeting. Thus, when the Dark Titan Sargeras finally came to Argus and offered the Eridar a place in his kingdom, Archimonde was the first to accept. After Archimonde became one of the Burning Legion's generals, he put Thal'Kiel's skull to good use. In life, Thal'Kiel had been unmatched in his ability to control demonic minions. I like how he immediately looks at us like, yep, that's right, that was me. And his skull was no less adept. World after world fell before Archimonde as he channeled his commands through the skull, compelling multitudes of demons to obey, his forces obliterating opponents with the grace and precision of an expertly choreographed ballet. Since then, possession of Thal'Kiel's skull has passed between a handful of Sargeras' elite generals, with preference given to those who lead invasions of the fallen Titan's most sought-after worlds. The Dreadlord Mephistroth, commander of the Legion's vanguard in Azeroth, was the last to be seen with it. And then we took it from him. Or rather, we convinced Thal'Kiel to join us willingly. Alright. And now for Destro. I really want to try and get the secret appearance for this, but in order to do that, I need to do this, the Ritual of Doom, and it requires requires 3 total players. So, and keep in mind, this is not like in vanilla where you could do this like almost anywhere. Like I've seen a clip where they did this with multiple people, but like in Ironforge. You can't do that. You have to actually go over here to a demonic gateway, which is into a summoning platform, and then use it. But you have to make sure you have at least 2 other warlocks with you. So it's just a little bit of, I now have to go convince 2 other warlock players to help me out with this. Because I would really like to get the secret appearance to get to drop from over whatever demon we summon. You just got to try and get other people to join you. Especially if you have any friends that you know play warlocks. This is the Scepter of Sargeras. Mortal hands were not meant to hold this staff. It was forged on the orders of Sargeras after his defeat in the War of the Ancients, intended as a means to conquer Azeroth once and for all. There you go. Better view right there. Relatively better view right there. There we go. This scepter rips open the fabric of reality, obliterating the barriers between worlds, destroying everything. Oh, I wasn't sure if that was an NPC. Apparently, she's missing arms. You notice that? Never mind. Anyways, between worlds, destroying everything that stands between you and your goal. If you're lucky, that's all the damage it will do. During the War of the Ancients, the Night Elf Queen Azara and her highborn sorcerers attempted to open a portal that would allow Sargeras into Azeroth. The challenge was unprecedented. Never before had anyone built a gateway that was strong enough for a Titan. Remember, a Titan is as big as a planet. We see this at the end of Legion when the Pantheon pulls Sargeras off of Azeroth. He's the size of a planet. There's even other artwork of this from some of the early years of Warcraft setting. There's a picture in the Chronicles book of him literally slicing a planet in half with his sword. It's a crazy image. Hold on, I need to take a drink of water. Gotta help my throat. Let's see. For weeks, the Highborn labored without rest, crafting and weaving spells to devise a passage through the Night Elf's colossal fount of power, the Well of Eternity. But just as Sargeras was about to emerge into the world, the Night Elf resistance disrupted the Highborn spellwork and demolished the Well of Eternity. Sargeras was cast back into the twisting nether, his ambition denied, his greatest chance to conquer Azeroth slipping from his grasp. The Dark Titan swore revenge. He would tear down the walls between himself and his prize. After his defeat at the Well of Eternity, Sargeras immediately planned his next method of infiltrating Azeroth. He knew that he couldn't rely on a static portal to serve a Titan. Such a gateway required an astronomical amount of power, and the most promising source had been destroyed in his last attempt. Moreover, the Highborn's laborious preparation and spellwork had given away his intentions, which had allowed the Night Elf resistance to thwart him. If he wanted to overcome Azeroth's defenders, Sargeras needed to enter the world with minimal warning. Thus, he commanded the Eridar to forge a tool that would wrench open rifts between worlds for only a short time, just long enough to let a portion of his soul through. Although that meant he couldn't enter Azeroth in his most devastating form, such an instrument would clear a path for his avatar to lead the Legion's invasion or carry out subtler schemes. Such an instrument would also weaken the integrity of the physical universe and threaten to collapse it. But Sargeras considered those to be only side benefits. Millennia ago, Sargeras ordered his most talented Eridar sorcerers to construct him a cosmic battering ram. They did not disappoint. First, scores of magi conducted dark rituals to channel countless portals into a single staff. Then, they protected the empowered artifact into every corner of the great dark beyond, weaving it into the fabric of reality, creating a thread that could be pulled to unravel the seams of the physical universe at will. To fuel this monstrous undertaking, 100 warlocks sacrificed 100 demons, selecting them from among the Legion's troops that had been part of the failed invasion of Azeroth. Thus was forged the jeweled scepter of Sargeras. Thus was born Azeroth's doom. The scepter of Sargeras is known for the gleaming jewel that adorns its apex. Wonder if it's that one right there. Many theorize that it represents Sargeras' baleful eye. Or maybe they're referring to this one. This is the upgrade appearance, by the way, so it's probably not a jewel anymore. It's probably that glowing ball of fire there, or fel. It's probably a Joel in the original appearance, which caught only a glimpse of Azeroth before the fallen titan was ripped back to the twisting nether. But the truth is far different. Soon after the War of the Ancients, Sargeras had a vision. The Well of Eternity imploded once again, but this time it dragged him down to the very core of Azeroth. He was there for only an instant, but in that moment he saw Azeroth's slumbering world soul. Slumbering world soul. And in that moment, the world soul opened one eye and gazed at the Dark Titan. He was enraptured. Since then, the eye of Azeroth's world soul has not been far from his thoughts. He commanded the Eridar who forged the scepter to crown it with that lone wondrous orb. Next to it, the Eridar placed 2 Nethrezim wings, a testament to Sargeras' conception of the world soul. Corrupted, demonic, and most importantly, his. The scepter of Sargeras was a marvel of arcane and fell sorcery, an instrument fit for a titan. It could lacerate the connective tissue of the physical universe, opening portals to any realm Sargeras desired. Yet the rifts it created would allow only a portion of his soul to enter. It was a minor setback. It was merely a setback. Sargeras would simply have to be more inventive with his plans. And so, he waited. Millennia later, Sargeras saw his opportunity. The guardian Aegwynn had become the most powerful mage on Azeroth, and not even the Council of Tirisfal could control her. Her pride made her a fine candidate for corruption. Sargeras could not infiltrate Azeroth in his most lethal form, but perhaps he could use the rebellious Guardian as a vessel for his machinations. From the Journal of Aegwynn, Guardian of Tirisfal. We had finished routing the Legion's minions when the sky turned black. My mouth went dry, and the hairs on my neck bristled, responding to stimuli that my mortal senses could not comprehend. It was like the coming of a monstrous storm, right before the Thunderheads would unleash their cataclysmic onslaught. Yet the air remained as still as great Galakron's bones. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And all we could do was wait. I'll always remember the sound, that slippery, hollow, cracking sound, like that of a mace splitting a giant's skull, but it was bigger than that. Louder. Longer. It pierced me like an arrow through my chest, though I knew the breach had happened some distance away. The edges of the world seemed to quiver, and for an instant, I thought they might collapse. But they did not. That was when the avatar of Sargeras entered the field of battle. In the icy wastes of Northrend, Sargeras drew the guardian Aegwynn into battle, advancing on his opponent as the portal that he had torn into Azeroth closed behind him. His avatar was but a pale shadow of his true form. But that hardly mattered. After all, even if he couldn't defeat Aegwynn, he could still use her for his own ends. He had only to weaken her defenses, to create an opening for a shard of his spirit to break through. Just as he'd infiltrated Azeroth with the scepter, so too would he invade Aegwynn's soul, corrupting it into another instrument of the Legion. Afterward, Aegwynn would remember the battle as the most brutal she'd ever fought. But she finally destroyed the avatar of Sargeras in an avalanche of arcane might. As she stood triumphant over her fallen foe, she could scarcely believe that she had won. Little did she know that she had lost. There we go. A little more closer on this part right here. From the Journal of Aegwynn, Guardian of Tirisfal. I have defeated the avatar of the great enemy, Sargeras, but I cannot enjoy my victory. There is a hollowness inside my breast, a persistent ache from a wound whose origin I do not know. It must be from the strain of the battle. I will dispose of the remnants of the fallen Titan's incursion, his avatar. Though but a fragment of his full form, rivals Galakron in stature, and I cannot let his bones take up residence next to the gargantuan proto-dragons. Who knows what foul taint lies in wait to be released? Even in death, the corpse is malevolent, gripping its cursed scepter as if it still intends to rule. The scepter. No one must be allowed to wield it. This was the instrument Sargeras used to enter Azeroth, tearing a gash in the universe that threatened to obliterate our world. The eye on top of the staff stares out, mocking me. I shall ensure that it never sees the light of day again. After Aegwynn defeated Sargeras' avatar, she interred his corpse in the ruins of Suramar, along with the artifacts that he bore. Deep beneath the sea, shielded by enchanted highborn seals, the scepter of Sargeras remained for centuries, its power undiminished. Sargeras attempted to regain control of the staff through Aegwynn, but the task proved more difficult than he had estimated. He could sway the Guardian in many ways, but he could not compel her to exhume his scepter. Whoops, sorry. I got distracted by something, lost my place. To exhume his scepter from its watery grave. Something held her back, a primal instinct louder than Sargeras' whispering. She knew the artifact was dangerous, that its use risked the destruction of all things. Even possessed by the Dark Titan, she would not yield. Sargeras realized that greater subtlety was needed. Eventually, he extended his pernicious influence to Aegwynn's son, Medivh, as he developed in her womb. Through this new vessel, Sargeras planned to recover his beloved scepter. Had he succeeded, the world of Draenor might not have been annihilated. Other than the Dark Titan, the scepter of Sargeras has had few wielders. One of them was the Orc Warlock Ner'zhul. After the Horde's defeat in the Second War, Ner'zhul sought to reinvigorate his followers by opening gateways to new worlds for them to conquer. To that end, he dispatched his servants to recover various artifacts from the tomb of Sargeras, including the scepter, which the fallen Titan had used to infiltrate Azeroth centuries before. Ner'zhul was not Sargeras, however, so he could not simply command the staff to open portals. He had to wait until the constellations of Draenor were properly aligned, and he could only use the scepter in conjunction with the other artifacts. The Warlock grew impatient, frustrated with his limitations, intoxicated by the skull of Gul'dan's influence. He had visions of his erstwhile apprentice, who urged him to unleash his godlike powers. When at last the moment arrived for Ner'zhul to act, he did so with wild abandon. Heedless of the consequences, it mattered not to him if Draenor was destroyed. In fact, he welcomed it as part of his legacy. With the scepter, he blasted hole after hole through the fabric of reality, shredding the seams connecting Draenor to the rest of the physical universe. As he rushed headlong through one of the portals, he could hear the world shattering behind him. After Draenor was destroyed, the demon lord Kil'jaedan wrested control of the scepter of Sargeras from Ner'zhul. At last, the artifact was back in the Legion's possession, and Kil'jaedan would set about using it to invade Azeroth. But he was not as powerful as Sargeras. He could not open a portal mighty enough even for his avatar. Thus, he conspired with Kael'thas Sunstrider. This is where the retconning or the messing around with the story of Burning Crusade comes into play. Thus he conspired with Kael'thas Sunstrider to create a gateway through the Sunwell, the Blood Elves' ruined fount of power. Combined with the world-rending force of the scepter, Kael'thas's portal cleared the way for Kil'jaedan's full form. However, before the Demon Lord could set foot on Azeroth, Anvina, the embodiment of the Sunwell's energies, intervened. She sacrificed herself, unleashing all of her strength on the Deceiver and allowing him to be thrown back into the twisting nether, along with the scepter of Sargeras. Funny that we never actually saw that there when that happened in the raid. The staff has not been seen on Azeroth since. A small comfort, for surely the Legion will use it to infiltrate the world once again. But no matter who wields it, the threat that it poses is unspeakable. The destruction of Draenor is testament to the devastation that even mortals wreak with this weapon. So yeah, you can understand why Destro was actually quite fun to play in Legion. It actually had a really cool and good artifact ability, like that opened a portal that you could use in battles to actually like blast energy at an enemy. It was quite fun, actually. So yeah, this is a pretty freaking powerful scepter in lore. Which, considering that right now, that during this time the Warlocks had arguably two of the most powerful weapons in lore, Ulthalesh and this scepter. Yeah, Warlocks are certainly, I mean, in lore you could say the Warlocks are the most powerful class in all of Warcraft, if they really, really let their power out. But as I've heard other people say, our Warlock characters here, we are constantly holding ourselves back, because we know what would happen if we went all out. And it's bad. And with weapons like this and Ulthalesh in our hands, it's even worse. So, that is the lore of the 3 artifact weapons in Legion. Pretty fun, Warlock in Legion. All 3 weapons, pretty cool. So, we will be taking a look at another class's weapons lore in Legion when we return. Stay tuned.